Hovering silently above water, sand and ice, it seemed like magic until science made it real. The hovercraft wasn't just a vehicle, it was a revolution in transport. Today, we'll explore the daring inventors, crazy prototypes, and engineering breakthroughs that turned this floating marvel from dream to reality. This is the history of the hovercraft. The dream of hovering over land and water dates back to the 18th century. Swedish scientist Emanuel Swedenborg sketched a platform lifted by manually operated fans, imagining a machine that could float rather than roll. His design could never be built with human power alone, but it planted the idea of frictionless travel on air. In the 19th century, British naval architect John Isaac Thornycroft experimented with injecting air beneath ship hulls to reduce water resistance. He received patents for devices that would later resemble early hovercraft. However, engines and compressors of the time were too weak to maintain a continuous air cushion. Between the world wars, military researchers experimented with similar vehicles. The basic principle of lifting a hull with air was understood, but engines were too heavy, compressors too weak, and materials insufficient. No one yet solved the problem of maintaining a stable air cushion capable of carrying substantial weight. Hovercraft remained an unrealized dream. The modern era of hovercraft began after World War II with Christopher Cockerell, an English radio engineer. Using a simple balsawood model, he demonstrated that channeling air downward could create lift stable enough to carry significant weight. His prototype worked, and with it, the modern hovercraft was born. Saunders Roe, an aviation company on the Isle of Wight, partnered with Cockerell to build the SRN-1, the first practical hovercraft. The SRN-1 was 30 feet long, powered by a single piston engine and a downward-facing fan. On July 25, 1959, the SRN-1 crossed the English Channel from Calais to Dover. In the mid-1960s, the US military explored hovercraft for riverine warfare in Vietnam. The Patrol Air Cushion Vehicle, or PACV, was based on the British SRN-5, but it was adapted for patrol, reconnaissance, and troop insertion. Operating in the Mekong Delta's shallow rivers, marshes, and mudflats, PACVs could travel where conventional boats could not. With speeds exceeding 60 knots, they allowed rapid mobility and surprise operations. However, their high cost, noise and maintenance demands limited deployment. Only a few were used in combat, but the PACV demonstrated that hovercraft could be militarily effective. After the PACV, the US Army developed the landing air cushion vehicle like the LACV-30, a 30-ton logistical hovercraft. Unlike the PACV's combat focus, the LACV moved cargo and vehicles from ship to shore in areas without docks or deep water. In the civilian world, the most iconic hovercraft era belonged to the cross-channel services between Britain and France. The flagship of this era was the SRN-4, first launched in 1968. Powered by multiple Rolls-Royce turbine engines and capable of carrying hundreds of passengers and dozens of cars at nearly 60 knots, the SRN-4 was unlike anything else in maritime transport. Passengers boarded via beach terminals, and the craft simply lifted itself onto an air cushion and glided across the channel. For 3 decades, these machines represented one of the fastest and most futuristic short-sea transport systems ever built. By the 1990s, however, high-speed catamarans and the opening of the Channel Tunnel made the service increasingly uneconomical. The last SRN-4s were retired in 2000. Following the LACV, the US Navy introduced the landing craft air cushion in the 1980s. These craft could transport troops, tanks and supplies from ship to shore at high speed, bypassing obstacles and shallow water. LCACs are larger, faster and more reliable than earlier US military hovercraft, representing the culmination of decades of American development. They remain in service today, demonstrating the hovercraft's ongoing military utility. In the 1980s, the Soviet Union introduced the Zubr-class, the largest hovercraft ever built. These vessels exceed 50 meters in length, carry multiple armored vehicles and over 100 troops, and land on beaches without ports or piers. Soviet engineers pushed hovercraft to unprecedented sizes, blending speed, amphibious capability and load capacity. As large passenger hovercraft disappeared, smaller craft quietly proved their long-term value. They became vital for search and rescue in floods, on frozen rivers, and in shallow wetlands where boats and vehicles failed. Remote communities also relied on them during unpredictable freeze-thaw seasons. Their strengths made them especially useful in science. In the Arctic, hovercraft could cross thin ice, open water, and rough frozen terrain in a single trip, something no other vehicle could manage. For decades, research teams used them not as futuristic machines, but as dependable tools built for places nothing else could reach. From commercial to military hovercraft, the hovercraft developed over centuries through innovation and experimentation. They never replaced ships or aircraft, but they created a new category of vehicles capable of crossing terrain previously impossible. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video about the history of the hovercraft, make sure to like, subscribe, and let me know what topic you would like to see next.